Good evening. Tonight is December 4th of 2024, and welcome to the Comprehensive Plan Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and note that we do have a quorum present. Our first agenda item is going to be a public hearing. We're going to start with a short presentation that will be provided by North Star Planning. This will help provide context. And then with the committee's permission, I'm actually looking at our agenda, and I'd like to move public comment up to item B if possible, and then we review all the comments together that we've received between online and then what we get tonight, if that's okay with the committee.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Sean, I think you're joining us remotely, is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So try to keep an eye out for you.
Madam Chair, I'd move that we open the public hearing.
Okay, yeah, do I have a
Second.
second?
Second?
All in favor?
Okay, all in favor? All right, Ben, I'll hand it over to you for a presentation.
Great, thank you. I'll keep this pretty brief and targeted, and I'll see if I can figure out how to share this successfully again. So, my name is Ben Smith, and I'm from North Star Planning. And we've been working with the Comprehensive Plan Committee for almost a year and a half on the process to develop a comprehensive plan. And our role in this process was really to help facilitate the committee's work. We'll get into the specifics here a little bit of the research and the public process that went into this. But first, I think I'd like to just take a moment to talk about what is a comprehensive plan. If you've been involved in this process or had a chance to attend a prior meeting, it is a long-range guiding document. It is, outside of a charter, probably the most important public document that the community has. It's important to have a comprehensive plan because it is there's a requirement in the Growth Management Act for how to do a plan, what the plan needs to include, but it's really the basis for a community zoning ordinance, land use ordinances like impact fees or TIF districts. There are a number of state grant programs that give additional points for having a comprehensive plan that's consistent with the Growth Management Act. So that's really kind of the bigger underpinning reasons for going through this process. But I also think it's a good thing to do on a regular basis, to have those community conversations about things that you don't always get to talk about on a year-to-year kind of basis. So the current comprehensive plan is written and went through this process back in 2004. And the basic ingredients of a comprehensive plan, those building blocks of the plan, are the inventory chapters, which is the big research project that we talk about that deals with a number of topics, from the economy to land use to natural resources, population and housing. But it also has some forward-looking components to this plan as well. So those are the vision statement, the future land use plan, and the goals and strategies and policies that'll help the community move toward making the progress toward that vision statement. And it's all built, as I said, on public participation and community involvement. So, as I mentioned, we started working on this in the second half of 2023 with the committee, with the goal of completing those inventory chapters that are kind of the baseline foundation for where are we today, what do we have for assets, kind of the state of things in the town. And it really provides the foundation for what do we need to plan for. Is the community growing or is it shrinking? Are there a lot of jobs or a little jobs? And trying to get a sense of where Raymond is today and also make some projections on the things that we need to be planning for. So that led to work around that vision statement, which is kind of the goalpost in the future. Like it's basically that aspirational statement about the kind of town people want to live in and they want to see Raymond become in the future. And there's parts of that involve some change, and there's parts of that involve making sure certain things stay the way they are into the future as well. That has a direct connection to the future land use plan. And there was a public workshop over at the fire station for that. And that is really the vision statement on a map. So when we talk about walkability and we talk about new housing and places to preserve, thinking about where those things are geographically is what that future land use map is really the job of that portion of the plan. And then the goals and policies and strategies are some of the more recent work that this committee's been involved with. And over the last couple months, we've been putting it all together into a plan document that is available on the website. It's been submitted to the state, so it's being reviewed there, as well as going through the review process in the community. And the public hearing tonight is a pretty formal part of that review process. So getting into a little more detail around the public participation, it involved conversations with town staff and department heads. It involved conversations with landowners, employers, people who represent lake associations, trying to get as broad a perspective as possible. It also was highlighted, I think, by a pretty well-circulated visioning survey that was available last summer. There was a data highlights workshop at the middle school that coincided with a pretty active day of basketball, as I recall, and folks were popping in and out throughout the day to provide some feedback around those visioning components. As I mentioned, the future land use workshop was over at the fire station. That was very well attended. I think if people may recall, there were some zoning issues that kind of maybe highlighted the importance for some of these conversations and planning for the future. And there was some good work at the polls. And I think that was characterized by the pom-pom voting that people were doing on their way out of the polling place. So when we put all of these things together, we came up with a number of high priority goals. These are on page 2 of the plan, and they involve some statements that are based in the vision statement, but essentially these high priority goals are to build a resilient Raymond, protect Raymond's natural and water resources, invest in road and traffic improvements, and related to that, prioritize safe walking and biking around the town, and to strengthen Raymond's sense of community. So each one of those high priority goals has a relatively large number, I don't have that number in front of me, but a large number of action items that take up a large spreadsheet in the back of the plan. But part of our work involved pulling out the most important ones that relate to these goals, and they had to do with adding capacity for the town to do its work, and that could take place through the form of adding staff or working through some kind of grant writing capacity that would bring in funds that would not be directly on the backs of taxpayers to do some of these recommendations that have costs associated with them. To develop a process to rank sites in Raymond that are most appropriate for solar development and to incorporate that criteria into a solar ordinance. to create a 302 master plan in partnership with the DOT based on the vision for Route 302 and the future land use plan, which we will talk about momentarily, and a desire to better understand speeds in towns, vehicle speeds in town. That came up a number of times through the public input process and in the surveys about specific locations in town, and trying to quantify that issue and deal with interventions from there. Building a trail or sidewalk, multi-use path perhaps that runs the length of Raymond Cape Road was a priority action item associated with those goals. Recognizing that that's a busy road and there's a lot of people who use that to walk and bike, and think about how to accommodate all of those users safely. And finally, to develop a master plan for the reuse of the Jordan Small Middle School. That's where we had our visioning workshop, and that will be turned over to the town. So this recommendation is about the reuse of that building, as well as the future use of other town-owned buildings, including the library and town office. So those are the highest priority action items. There's a number of strategies and policies throughout the document, and like I said, there's a big long list, but these are the highlights associated with those highest priority goals. So one of the main portions of the plan, at its heart, it's a land use plan. The comprehensive plan covers a lot of ground, covers a lot of topics. But one of the main purposes of the plan, as I mentioned earlier, is to provide guidance for zoning and future town policy, as well as investments, capital improvement planning. So the map you see on the screen, which is in the front portion of the planning document, the following maps that we'll show that zoom in on different portions of this map, it's not zoning. It is guidance for zoning. What these places do, they describe the character and relative amounts of change or relative amounts of protection from change in the future for different parts of the community. And those are indicated through growth areas, which are places for investment and targeted small-scale changes. They are transition areas where you might not focus investment the way you would in a growth area, but there is activity and business in those places today. And then rural areas are places to protect from the impacts of development. And in Raymond, not every community has these kinds of places, but we also indicated critical rural areas, which should be receiving the highest level of protection from development. If those are the darkest green areas on the planet. We'll zoom in so you can see some of these things better. But the idea here is that within rural, and especially critical rural, those are the places where you may focus conservation efforts, think about zoning to minimize the impact of development on natural systems and resources. And the flip side of that is growth areas where generally there's already development today, but what kind of improvements and investments can you make to improve the quality of life and facilitate economic development where that's appropriate. So zooming in on this map, hopefully you can see some of these things a little better. There's a few types of growth areas indicated on the map. And the first one here is the Route 302 growth area. This is generally impacting, showing over the parcels that front on Route 302 from the town line with Wyndham north to about Main Street. And it is not very deep. You'll see there's a rural area between this growth area and the lake, and a critical rural area on the lakeshore itself. So talking about this growth area, this is what a lot of people think of when they think of commercial activity in Raymond today. It's where a number of businesses and restaurants are, and this is the place that the community input and conversations we've had have really said this should be a place that could be improved with traffic safety improvements in particular, but also bike lanes, sidewalks, and some streetscaping, landscaping improvements that would make this a more pleasant place to pass through, but also to spend time, to stop and have the ability to get around, park your car, and move around the area without driving from development to development. Those sidewalk connections and off-road trails would connect to the parks, to the beach, and to Raymond Village, which is the more traditional downtown. It's mostly residential today, but thinking about how to make those connections and being able to move between these areas without getting on 302 for every single trip is an important consideration in the plan. This is an area that's also envisioned for continued commercial development. And the feedback we heard was that it's not necessarily going to be envisioned or incentivized for national chains or larger box stores, but this is the place where there should be some opportunity for smaller, more local businesses, smaller chains, regional chains. And finally, adding in some housing to this area will help the business community, but it's also a place to think about where future Raymond residents would live without impacting natural resources and traffic in other parts of town. So during the public hearing, I would be happy to come back to any of these slides, but skipping through to some of these other areas and just kind of working our way through. The second area that we've identified is village growth. So 302 growth is more on the 302 road again. And there's two village areas that are shown as growth areas in the plan. And it's the area of and around Raymond Village today, maybe what a lot of you think of as the village plus some of the surrounding parcels, as well as East Raymond Village, which is the area where we are now. So this is kind of the civic core, where the town office and the school, the fire station, garage, or the garage, I should say, are in East Raymond Village on the hill. And the idea here is to preserve that village character, to enhance that village character with safe walking and biking, as well as places to gather, places to have community events. The school fills that role today, but when we were having conversations, it was thinking about where will the summer concerts be, or where will the fireworks be, where will the tree lighting be, those kinds of things. These are places that would also serve local businesses, and I think the distinction here is that on Route 302, there's a lot of seasonal traffic, there's a lot of pass-by traffic, there's some comparison shopping, so things that people would come from other places to do, whereas these villages would be focused more on meeting the day-to-day needs of Raymond residents and people who are here for the lakes and more in the community. And finally, additional housing in this area should be characterized as single-family homes and small multifamily. 3, 4, 6 units. Generally, I believe the CompPlan talks about 2-story buildings. It's not multifamily the way it's described on Route 302, which could be larger buildings. There is a transition area, the telecommunications transition area. This is existing industrial land. There is it's on Route 121, which is Meadow Road. It says here there's a TIF district, which is tax increment financing, so that it's been subject to commercial development. And the idea here is that it should continue to be used for commercial development, as opposed to office space, or in addition to potentially office space or light manufacturing in the future. As a transition area, it would not be envision to have the same level of investment or infrastructure that you would expect to see in a growth area, but it's really a recognition that this is not a rural area. There is development. It's used for commercial purposes, and it should continue to be used that way in the future. There was some discussion around, if there's new development in the future, it should be buffered with landscaping or setbacks so that it doesn't impact or minimizes the impact to residents in the vicinity. So most of the land, and I can skip back to the big townwide view for comparison at the end if you want to see that, but most of the land in Raymond, the areas outside of 302 growth area, the 2 village growth areas, and that transition area are mostly rural, and they're envisioned to be rural in the future. The plan talks about supporting working lands like farms and forests. These are the places to target additional conservation, as I mentioned earlier, prioritizing natural resources and visual buffers. Development in this area will continue to be, as envisioned in this plan, characterized by single-family homes, maybe some duplexes and small multifamily, but this development, if subdivisions continue to happen here, they should be open space subdivisions to protect rural functions and rural character in this area. And then there's a couple places marked on the map called rural crossroads, and there's one in North Raymond, and there's one down by Raymond Neck, and we can flip back to map. I'll show you where those are, but the idea here is that these should be places where if small businesses, office space, sandwich shops, convenience stores should be allowed as part of a rural character, rural economy. These would be smaller, focused on the intersection. And there are Raymond Cape Road, Hawthorne Road, and North Raymond Road in Ledge Hill. Traditional crossroad developments. And finally, critical rural. These are the places that need the most protection from development, and really they are the areas along all lake shores and the Tenney River, and large blocks of undeveloped land in North Raymond. There is conservation areas, conservation land in those places today, but the idea here is that those provide great opportunities to enhance existing protections around the lakes and think about additional habitat connectivity for those larger blocks of land where, as I mentioned, those rural functions, not just rural character, but aquifer recharge, wildlife habitat, riparian areas around the streams and lakes should be preserved and protected. So in order to start making progress and help make these things happen, to see some change where you want change to happen and where you minimize change where you don't want that to happen, there's a number of actions and recommendations in the plan. And each one of those has a timeline and a responsible party. One of them is to establish a comprehensive plan implementation committee that could take on the work of not only the work to implement, but kind of shepherd implementation, because it's not up to one group in town to make this happen. There are recommendations that our town staff, there's recommendations that involve working with the land trust and the lake associations. Elected officials need to make certain actions. The planning board has to make certain actions. So this group felt, and it's very common to see in other communities, some kind of implementation committee kind of herding all of those efforts and making sure everyone's pulling in the same direction. And experience shows you won't make even progress year after year on all of the goals, but if you make progress here, the next year you make progress in a different place, you can kind of eventually, over the longer term, see good progress across the board, hopefully. So the implementation plan also includes kind of this toolkit of grant and funding opportunities to kind of give the town a head start on places to look for appropriate resources that would kind of sync up with some of the things that are in the plan recommendations. And there's a recommendation for some annual reporting to kind of give the community at large a sense of how we're doing. We said all of these things were important in the plan, and we have a bunch of homework to do and recommendations to carry out. How are we doing? And kind of keeping an eye on that over time. So finally here, in the last few months, what we've done is submit a revised draft to the committee. There's been a public comment period, and I know a number of people have submitted comments already through the website. We've submitted the plan to the state for them to begin their review process. That was last month. Tonight is the public hearing. And looking forward, what we expect is to hear back from the state regarding consistency with the statutory elements of what is in a comp plan next month. And we'll be making a final round of edits and updates to the plan based on that review, as well as the review locally. So the comments we heard through the website, hopefully today we'll hear some good comments, constructive comments that we can incorporate and update the final plan document that would go to the select board to put on a spring town meeting warrant. So that work through the select board we anticipate would happen in March or so, in order to make it on for a June town meeting, where the whole town would have an opportunity to vote on the plan as a whole. So I am happy to leave the slides up, or we can refer to them as we go. But I think this is an opportunity for the committee, and certainly for us to hear from the public, kind of review some of the public comments we've already had. And this is a public hearing, so we're looking forward to hearing comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. I would, before we completely start with this, I would like to ask just a clarification. So it's clear for me, we do not then have to make final decisions on changes tonight. Is that what you're saying? Like, the main goal is to take public input and gather all of that, and then that doesn't mean tonight as a committee we need to make those.
Correct.
Okay. Does that mean that we need to schedule a follow-up meeting to do that?
The committee's next regularly scheduled meeting in January would be a holiday, and so I think what we were hoping to do is either get some direction from the committee tonight that we could make these changes over January and February timeframe, and submit that updated plan to the town in February. If this committee, it's certainly at your discretion if you want to meet again to review an updated plan before it goes to the select board.
I just wanted to be clear. Peter and I had sort of discussed this earlier when we were looking at our timeline, that we thought that tonight was the night where we had to sort of make our final suggestions to you to make changes.
Yeah, we'll be looking for some good direction from this committee, but it's up to you if this is the very last chance to go through this before it goes to the select board.
Right.
So there's certainly, I think what I'm trying to show on this slide is that there's more process at the select board level, and through the town meeting vote is the current plan to have this before it becomes an official policy document.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make just a housekeeping recommendation, and that's that as with all public hearings, the expectation would be that all questions or comments would be directed to the chair, and that there be no back and forth. Otherwise, the chair certainly has the right to call upon North Star or any of the committee members to fill in, just to be able to expedite things and move things along.
Yes, and along those same lines, I would please ask that you introduce yourself and state your address or at least neighborhood. Yes, stand at the podium, and then also please try maybe to be 3 minutes in your comments. I know that's often difficult, and I would like to switch between those who are in person tonight and those who are online. And Sue, I was wondering if you could help with that by telling me sort of who's in line. So with that, whoever would like to go first here, please feel free to step up to the podium. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm afraid I've lost my voice a little bit today, so bear with me. My name is Steve Crane. I own a camp on Raymond Pond, and I'm also a member of the board of the Raymond Waterways Protective Association. In fact, I'm the environmental officer of RWPA, and I want to focus on the sections of the draft plan that address Raymond's water resources. I feel that the final plan needs to do more to acknowledge and support the critical work that's being done by local volunteers, especially through their lake associations, to monitor the health of our lakes. This work includes our invasive plant patrols, who search for invasive species in our lakes and ponds that are currently free of such infestations. And this past year, 39 Raymond residents participated in this program. They spent over 150 hours out on the water looking for plants that might be suspicious. Fortunately, they didn't find anything that was a new invasive. That is a big effort. Similarly, many volunteers are involved in monitoring the quality of our waters. They periodically measure such parameters of lake health as water clarity and temperature, dissolved oxygen, phosphorus, and algae. Volunteers and paid staff also inspect the boats that are being launched into Raymond ponds. This past year, over 3,000 inspections were carried out on the 4 Raymond public boat launches to prevent the spread of invasive plants and animals that may be coming in from other parts of the state or other states or other countries. So I think this plan's coverage of these issues could be greatly strengthened with only a few brief additions. I'm not going to read them, nobody can follow it, but I'm going to submit the written document. They're just pages 7, 19, and the table on page 40 and 41. And they're mostly just a few words here, a few words there. So I would like to have those considered for inclusion in the final draft. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Sue, is there anybody online with their hands raised?
There isn't yet, but for those online, if you do want to speak, you can go under reactions and choose raised hand. That way I'll know you want to say something.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, Brian Walker, Raymond, Raymond's obvious, Rolfe Road. First of all, I want to thank the committee. It's a phenomenal document, and I think it's phenomenally well thought out. I had one comment, suggestion. Actually, I guess they're all, nothing that has to be answered tonight. One thing that when looking through it, I did not see, but I thought might be valuable is to say that if this plan was fully implemented, how many people could it serve in Raymond? We know we're on that point where we're now getting pushed out of the more populated areas. So it seems to me that any comprehensive plan has to incorporate the increase in the number of people. It'd be interesting to say if we were to do these things, create these growth areas and the like, it could take an incremental amount of population for the town, and I think that would be helpful in terms of also getting it through the organization. recognizing that prioritization is going to be really important on this. I mean, it's a little bit like kids in candy stores when you see all these things. We want to do them all because they're all great ideas. One suggestion I have would be to think about the bike paths that you're talking about and how you link those village growth areas to each other and to the Route 302. And Madam Chair, is it possible to put the first map that Ben showed back up for a moment?
Yes.
Ben, is that possible to do?
Yep.
It's the big picture one.
Give me
And the reason I bring it up is that as much as I think the idea of having a bike path on Cape Road is a great idea, I have nothing against it, is that should it be the first priority? And if we get that map up, I think what I want to do is just make the visual that I'm thinking about. Yeah. Sorry, if you go back to the big one, yeah. So if you look at where the Cape is, the Cape isn't really central to the town, and that's nothing against the Cape. I have nothing against the Cape whatsoever. I love it. But if you think about where where the village growth areas are, they're much more central to the town, and I would suggest that, and it may be just very difficult to do it on state roads, but that idea of a Route 85 connector between the two village growth areas, especially with hopefully the anticipated greater utilization by the town of Jordan Small, I think makes a heck of a lot of sense. And then selfishly, I'd love for it to go right around Panther Pond, which would create a loop between all of those areas. But then again, that gets into my wish list. But I think the idea of making sure that the village growth areas are connected and easy to get to by more than just cars is a really valuable thing. And the last thought was just a part of what, and I don't know how this fits into how the town, where does this committee stop and the town begin? But the question about funding of some of these initiatives, and of course this is over a long-term period, may become one of the challenges to having some of this implemented. And one thought that comes to mind is the thinking about a one-time bond that would fund some of the larger capital improvement projects. I think that in that way it both spreads out the cost of the effort and also fits into that long-term idea of we're planning for something that at least has a 10-year or more life cycle. And I do think that might be an important and a way that the town's people would be open to that kind of investment for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Sue, are you able to see if?
We don't have anyone just yet with their hand raised.
Okay.
Peter,
Yes. Just a couple of comments on what was said. First of all, as far as if you look at that map and you were to look at East Raymond Village, which is the orange area, not the 302 indicated area, you'll see that it's almost absolutely in the center of the town. So, I would just reinforce that point as far as a central location. And secondly, as far as comments from Ben, he's right, but I can give you the actual number. The action items that come from those 4 or 5 priority goals are 121. And just to give you some background, in the 2004 comprehensive plan, there were 131 action items, so equivalent to what we have today. What I will tell you is that to date, less than half of those action items from 2004 have actually been implemented. So when we talk about the implementation committee and the real work that lies ahead of us, it really goes to the implementation of those 121 actions that are associated with 5 goals. Thank you.
I'd like to invite anybody else up to the podium.
Good evening, Mike Richmond, Cedar Lane, and also a member of a local group called the Raymond Short-Term Rental Initiative. And I'll be brief. We've read through the document and really want to thank all of you for your time and effort. It's really well put together. Specifically, of course, for us,
Just disappeared.
on page 118, one of the recommendations to explore a tracking or registration program for short-term rentals in Raymond. Just wanted to thank you for putting that in there, and also to let the town know in general that we ourselves have put tremendous effort into a draft, feel very good about it, and hope that we can work with the town on helping implement that. That is my plug. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'm still not seeing any hands raised. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak tonight?
Oh, we do have one hand raised online. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Randy, go ahead.
Yes, hello. Randy Robinson, off Fair Road, up in the North Raymond section, in what you guys are calling the critical rural lands. So I'm curious what that's going to do for potential zoning for those properties. I tend to comment online, and I never heard back from it. It was about 2.5 weeks or so ago. So I didn't know if that had been reviewed at all through the internet.
Randy, we've received all comments, but we have not responded to them individually.
Okay, so I had written a lot of stuff in there, basically pertaining to, as a landowner, and what potential uses that we could have as landowners. I understand critical rural versus rural. I just curious as to why or how far expanded it got in certain areas of the North Raymond area. So there's basically 4 or 5 major landowners, and I'm one of those that's been put into this critical rural area. So I'm wondering what my future is reading through it. I'm also one of the 2 maple producers in the town of Raymond that the comprehensive plan actually talks about. So I just wanted to bring that up and how that's going to be, as a landowner, what the potential uses we'll be able to utilize. Because what I read through there is basically to get with a potential nonprofit organization to give tax breaks to allow for walking areas. Now, I don't understand that, and I guess the control of private land. Anyways, that's my comment.
Thank you, Randy. Go ahead.
Jennifer Danzig, Pulpit Rock Road. So just, Peter and I have talked about this a couple times at a bunch of different meetings, select board, planning board, but I think it would be helpful, just because we have a group and there are people watching, if we can talk about how the comprehensive plan affects our ordinances in town and going forward. Obviously, this came up with the solar ordinance, and it was not in line with the 2004 comprehensive plan, and it cost a significant amount of money for myself and my neighbors to hire an attorney in order to fight that, and we got ping-ponged back and forth a lot, and then we had a citizens initiative and we changed the law, and in a week the planning board is going to try and change the solar ordinance again. So where it's being addressed in the upcoming comprehensive plan, I guess I just want, I think it would be good clarification for planning board, select board, citizens to understand how the comprehensive plan works sort of in conjunction with the ordinances that are in play, and how the ordinances have to be in compliance with the spirit of the comprehensive plan, and I guess what are the remedies when they're not, because it shouldn't be up to individual citizens to pay thousands of dollars to a lawyer in order to manage that. So I guess I'm just wondering if we can explain how the accountability works if, as a community, we've set out our vision statement, we've said what we want for our town, what we hope our town looks like in the future, what's important to us. Citizens have spoke up through doing their own initiatives and voting, and et cetera, to ensure that that the new comprehensive plan as well, and the old one, until the new one's fully in effect, are being followed by the people that we're entrusting to write the ordinances. Peter, would you speak to that, if you don't mind?
I absolutely don't mind.
Okay, that would be great.
Sure. I guess what I'd say is that, number one, the 2004 comprehensive plan, or the old plan, is still in effect, and it's in effect until this plan gets adopted by the town in June, or doesn't, gets rejected. And in that 2004 plan, as you can well imagine, there was really no mention of solar farms, because there were no solar farms in 2004. But what it did speak to was that development should be excluded on the 302 corridor when it was abutting a residential property. And I think that was the issue, and certainly the commercial solar farm fit into that category. What I've said, unless I've been totally misinformed by the state, and as Ben basically mentioned at the beginning, the comprehensive plan of a municipality has no statutory force. Legally, we can't pass ordinances. And this map, as Ben pointed out, is not a zoning map. So to speak to the other caller just a moment ago, as far as critical rural areas, we're not the ones here, and this plan is not the plan that's going to be changing the zoning in the town. The zoning in the town is basically changed by the people in the town. That's their influence on planning board, select board, and the like, and their influence is what changes ordinances. But as far as the effect, as was alluded to, my understanding is that as far as the courts are concerned in the state of Maine, the comprehensive plan that is approved by the state for a municipality forms the legal underpinnings for all of the zoning ordinances and development in the town. And therefore, if you have a comprehensive plan that says X, then the planning board and the selectmen cannot propose ordinances that are Y. In other words, they cannot be in conflict. If they are, what does it mean? It simply means that legally the municipality is in a poor position. And so anyone that challenges what the planning board, select board does will be in a bit of a problem when it comes to Superior Court, because Superior Court's going to go to the document and say that people of the town of Raymond voted in X. Why are you proposing Y? And so that's my understanding of how it works. But getting back to the issue with solar, I believe what you'll find is in the action plans, there is very clear that the suggestion of the comprehensive plan is that the planning board put together a criteria for the location of any of these solar farms in the future, commercial. So that there be a criteria built into the ordinance. So as one landowner told me or asked me, he said, well, if and I think this is true in the state. If I've got a 40-acre farm, and the only way I can keep that 40-acre farm functioning appropriately is to put 5 acres in solar farm that I lease out to someone, ultimately, what's the greater good? Well, the greater good is, probably going to be to keep that agricultural land in production. And therefore, understanding that if it meets the criteria, if it has the appropriate buffers, the appropriate considerations as far as how it abuts up against residential areas, that's what this plan was outlining. And hopefully that's going to be a discussion at the planning board going forward. Maybe not this round, but eventually.
Thank you. I appreciate that being in the plan. So I guess what I'm hearing is that there is no recourse other than legal in order to hold the town accountable to the comprehensive plan, the spirit of the comprehensive plan of the people of Raymond, right? So is that my understanding? Is that correct? That legal action is the only thing that can hold our townspeople to...
I can tell you that I served for 25 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals in this municipality, and I learned very early on that that's the position you want if you have absolutely no political aspirations, is once a month getting together and telling your neighbors what they can or can't do with their own property. But ultimately, yes, it gets decided in the courts, and so literally it's got to be the courts that will eventually grapple with those issues. If no one challenges it, it happens.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'm not seeing any hands on the Zoom. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to come up to the podium? Okay, going once, going twice. Don't be shy. You're here for a reason, I'm sure. Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands up, or nobody is standing up to get to the podium. I guess we can close the public hearing, or we can just go on to our review of the comments.
I think Ben was going to walk us through the online comments.
Okay.
I can do that. So there were a number of comments that were submitted through the website during this open public comment period. One of the folks who spoke this evening referenced sending in some comments. We have those here. Generally, I can read them all if you like, but I think characterizing them, a lot of them had to do with the specifics of where to start. There were a few comments that I would say were critical of the effort or the plan in general. By and large, most of the comments were supportive with some specific direction to say this, for example, this is a great plan, but we need to pay more attention to Raymond's water resources. Or this is a great plan, but I don't think we need a path or trail down Cape Road, for example. I'm not sure. I'm happy to continue as the chair wishes. We can read them or summarize them or have them submitted for the record.
I would like to ask, first of all, has the committee generally had a chance to review the comments, including the ones that we got later this afternoon, so up until I think 2:30? And I'd also like to propose that we do have these available for public viewing, if possible somehow, so that they can be reviewed and put into a record, I suppose, or added to our minutes. Is that
I can put a note in the minutes for Mel to add them, yeah.
Yes, that way they're in the record. Peter?
Madam Chair, I guess what I'd recommend is that what we can do is certainly discuss generalities. In other words, when I did the review, I saw some trends similar to the things that Ben was mentioning. So if other individuals on the committee would like to discuss maybe some of the trends rather than the outliers, then that might be helpful. And certainly at the next meeting, and quite possibly it will be the last meeting, but it would be a meeting where we would be more specific in breaking down all of the online questions or comments and putting them in some sort of category. I mean, there were 3 comments on the mission statement. The 3 comments on the mission statement were suggesting things like our mission statement is too long. It's a tome. I found that interesting. Mission statements are supposed to be succinct. That's my understanding. We were a third less wordy than the 2004 mission statement. I don't know if that's progress over a decade, but I can tell you we managed to cut it down by 33%. One of the things, understanding is that there were literally 5 events, I believe, that we had over the almost 3 years. And I'm not taking anything away from North Star. June 2023, absolutely. This committee started in August of 22. So it's been a long time. But what I would tell you is that as far as the mission statement was concerned, there were 3 comments. Another one was concerned about the phrase that everybody wants to, just paraphrase it, everybody that wants to live in Raymond should have a reasonable opportunity to live here. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how else the committee could have worded that, and I wasn't on the subcommittee that actually drafted that, so there are others here that could speak to that as well. But just from my perspective, I'll go back to some legal perspective. What does the judge generally say? What would a reasonable person do? And I know that's hard these days to really determine, what's a reasonable person. But I would tell you that that's the language that the committee came up with. A reasonable opportunity to live here. And so that's, to me, it encompasses a lot. Like, is there a house that I can afford here? Is there some sort of transportation that can allow me to get to my work and back? Are the roads safe? It goes on and on and on. You can read whatever you want into it. At the moment, it's escaped me what the 3rd comment was on the mission. But I guess what I'd tell you is this committee really made every effort to get input from the community on that mission. And once again, as Ben mentioned at the beginning, that mission really is what begins to form the whole basis for the plan. And that was through survey and you. And by you, I mean those individuals, and I'm preaching to the choir here, and those on Zoom that are willing to become involved. Ideally, I'd love to see the entire community involved, but that's not going to happen. So it's really those people that care enough to get involved that give us the feedback. But anyway, that'd be my recommendation, Madam Chair, would be to ask if anyone else observed any other trends on comments. I think the other one that I'd throw out that Ben mentioned was there seemed to be multiple comments about it would be great to have a path running the full length of Raymond Cape, but it should that be the first priority for paths in town? So I'll leave it there.
So Peter, I thought that was actually a little bit of a mixed bag, a 50-50 split on whether Cape Road bike path was a good idea or not.
Yes, true. Yeah.
Yes, would any of the committee members like to talk about trends they noticed?
I would echo the sentiment about the bike path / walking trail on Cape Road. I think also what we've kind of heard tonight, maybe it is something that everybody wants, but maybe the priorities are different within town. And, I would say it's not central to town, right? So the odds that someone in North Raymond is going to, drive their car down there, park, and then take that are probably, less than if there was something more central. And I think maybe a reasonable thing would be, I struggle with developing too many committees and subcommittees, but, if there's a master plan of paths in town, maybe that's a way to better solve this, to get the amount of community input that we need, to kind of prioritize that. Because I do think a Panther Pond loop would be pretty nice, connecting the new village areas together would also be pretty nice. And I think that there, obviously there's a lot of privately owned land in town, and, none of this works without kind of working in mutual cooperation with landowners that would allow that. So I think it might be a great idea, but, we have to think about the implementation committee, and they're going to have to implement it. So there's practical considerations. So I guess that would be my comment.
I would agree with that, because I think we were hesitant to talk too much about along 85 because that's not our road, and would be a significant undertaking. So I know that we'd all would appreciate a sidewalk or easier biking on those main roads, but I mean, the reality is that might be very difficult to accomplish. And I think possibly our view was that Cape Road might be more within our reach.
I think if I recall the conversation, there is a contingent of residents who are willing to take that on, who live on Cape Road. There are a lot of safety concerns, especially in the summer down by the ferry, and that's where a lot of that was generated. So I agree that there are more critical areas of town that could use that focus, but I think practically that was part of the discussion. Is it something that we can do because it is one of our roads, and there may actually be some resources to do it with.
And it's a very dangerous road. There's already been a death on that road.
I
don't want to get up to speak. I just wanted to throw that up there for you guys to realize that it's a safety issue.
Sorry, if you are going to continue, I do have to ask that you go up to the podium. Thank you.
I think too we should, kind of think about like how many people can be benefited by certain projects as well, so that, if we're looking at connecting villages areas, or if we're talking about 302 and having walkability around there and connecting it to a village area that we're talking about, how many more people might that benefit than, the residents on Raymond Cape Road? But
I guess I would also add, I think to Danelle's comment, if people are volunteering, their services to get these things built, there's no reason we can't double up. And I think, we talk a few times in the comp plan about increasing capacity, and I think that's not necessarily hiring people, that's finding people within town to volunteer. And this would be a really good example of increasing town capacity to take something that's on. If we have a dedicated group of volunteers, that could work in conjunction with the departments in town to make this happen.
I'd just add that this committee's work would have been so much greater, and I believe nowhere near the level of completeness had we not had North Star planning. I think it's an incredibly complex task to pursue a comprehensive plan for a town with so many different inputs and resources and desires and opinions. And I think we'd have been struggling long and hard and many late nights had we not had North Star planning here to guide us on this excellent document.
Peter?
Madam Chair, I guess my sense as far as reading the comments online, as far as the trail or path along Raymond Cape, and certainly I appreciate the comments on the safety, and that's a whole other issue, road safety in general in the town. But I guess my sense from a couple of the comments indirectly was the fact that where the priority should be for walking paths and bike paths and the like kind of goes in line with the idea of the village concept. My understanding has always been that you want to build a road, what you want is a destination. And so you ask yourself, is there a destination at the end of this path or trail? And I guess, if you're not thinking of a concept of some sort of a small village on the corner of Hawthorne and 302, then there is no destination. So not to say that it's not a worthwhile endeavor, but the sense I get in reading the majority of the comments online anyway, it was that it would not be the highest priority, and I believe we made it a high priority in the plan. That might be something to revisit based on what other feedback we get from the town as far as exactly assigning where sidewalks, bike paths, and the like go. It's also interesting to note that the village concept and where we're sitting right now on East Raymond historically was a village in Raymond. It's not that we're reinventing that. It was a village here. Actually, I believe there was a small village down where 302 and Hawthorne is. And I believe that the whole idea of those concepts of the village, as it was mentioned, is to try and not necessarily. We can be a little selfish. It's not to serve necessarily the people from away or people driving through. It's to serve the residents of the town, so that maybe we can avoid a little bit of that crazy summer traffic on the major thoroughfares. And if we want a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas or something like that, we don't have to drive into Wyndham to get it. So those are my comments.
I would like us to make sure, there are a couple comments about places maybe we had some inaccuracies, so I do want to make sure we investigate those. I just scrolled away from it. I don't know why I did that. For example, Maine Lakes Environmental Association only supports Sebago Lake, not Crescent Lake, etc. So things like that, I would like to at least make sure we investigate and make sure that we're being as accurate as possible. And also that we are spelling out all acronyms first.
And I would also, I'm more of a numbers person, so if we do have things that look a little out of whack on a percentage basis, maybe including what the objective increase is or decrease is would be good. And I know we did do it in some places. I think the median home price in Raymond, we did that. It was a really big percentage, and then we showed, what it increased from to what it is now. And I think, that would be helpful and clarifying for everybody.
Go ahead, Peter.
I believe also I read a comment or two from online that were talking simply about the way that we organize the actions. And there was a suggestion that maybe those be organized by priority. In other words, we have ongoing, and then we have high priority. Then we have medium term, if you will, and then low term or low priority. There was a suggestion on one of the online comments that we organize it that way, so it's a little more readable rather than having it bounce all around a high priority, a low priority, immediate, that sort of a thing, that we organize it in some more readable format.
I did want to circle back a little bit to touch on the point that Randy Robinson had talked about with the land, the large lots of land, and that we had some good discussions in our meetings about how can we protect some of those large plots of land, especially some of the summer camps that we have, and how can we kind of protect them from turning into subdivisions or, from becoming so expensive that people can't hold on to them anymore. And so kind of talking about what are possibilities that we could give as options, type something like creating recreational space opportunities for trails and whatnot, but it's not saying that somebody who has a land, and works it can't continue to do that. And there's no, it's not like we're recommending ordinances or zoning rules about how people can use their land, but trying to explore and recognize options of how can we help protect those large lots? How can we help protect the resources and the natural resources that are there? How can we make sure that they're being forested and farmed in a way that preserves the land in sustainable ways? And wanting to make efforts to help protect those resources.
I think there was also some discussion about ensuring that people who do rely on their land are able to utilize that land, just like Peter was speaking about in terms of keeping their farms or keeping their maple production business. So I don't think the intent there is to exclude those uses at all. And if there are concerns, we'd certainly want to hear what those particularly are.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say that there was discussion here, although I didn't see anything online about it. But as far as ordinances and development and commercial development and everything else, and I think there was a pretty deep discussion about when the word came up about preserving our farms. There aren't a whole lot of farms in the town of Raymond anymore. There's some, but there aren't a lot. But not tying your hands to the point where if someone has a farm and they want to keep it going, what can we do to keep that land, agricultural land, even if it were to the point of saying, well, are there ordinances that would allow in the rural areas agritourism, a petting farm, farm stands with farmers markets, all of those type of things would seem to be something that at first thought when you say, no, we don't want any commercial in our rural. Well, think about it sometimes as far as what you can and can't do. If the ordinance is designed appropriately, you can have both.
Do we make a mention, Ben, you had mentioned in your presentation, the concept of these open space developments. If one of these landowners that owns a large lot decides to sell it and a developer buys it and decides they want to make a subdivision in there, I want to make sure that the plan kind of mentions that in these type of rural and critical rural areas that, open space type plans would be what we would want to see so that it clusters the housing and the development into a smaller portion of the lot and could maintain and protect a larger portion of the lot, and rather than having 5-acre lots throughout a subdivision where you're really spacing things out and not making it so that it can be utilized efficiently and protected sufficiently.
Yes, the plan calls for that kind of organization of development. There's a couple questions. One is how much development, and then the next question is how does it happen? And I think that certainly, and it has been said in these committee meetings in the past, and I'll say it here, is that a rural or critical rural designation in the future land use plan doesn't mean there would be no development of any of those properties in the future. It just means when development happens, how much and how will it occur. Same thing with the growth area. I don't think anyone sitting at the table, no one at North Star certainly is envisioning skyscrapers and all of these growth areas. I think that the idea of, to an earlier public comment about how many people could these growth areas accommodate? What is a build out analysis of these growth areas? It really depends, number one, what kind of time scale you're talking about. The life of this plan is really thinking about the next 10 to 20 years. And secondly, I think the plan has done a good job of, through maps and through narrative in the plan, kind of describing, trying to paint that picture of the character and what these places would look like. Not too far in the future, but again, maybe 20 years in the future, so that you're providing good guidance for policies and zoning ordinances, so that when we say growth area, we're not talking about 40 homes per acre. We're really just talking about something much more modest, much more Raymond scale, and that's described in the plan. And how that actually gets implemented and what that means and how fast it gets implemented is going to be up to the town to go through that prioritization process.
I do have one kind of add-on to that. I think that those growth areas are mandated by the state that we have to include. The committee didn't sit up here and say, we want these necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying we said the latter, but we had to include at least one in our plan. And I think the state has implications for those growth areas, and I think we should just all consider that. I think LD 2003 is a good example. They specifically call out growth areas that are in towns' comp plans for, basically added density bonuses and things like that. So I think it would be prudent, for us as a town to realize that there's likely future zoning, incentives from the state that are going to come due to the housing crisis in the state. And I think LD 2003 is a good present example of what they're probably going to look to do. And I think that, designating those growth areas in a way that, the state ultimately can push down zoning changes, on a 10 to 20 year timeline, that it could happen. And it just did happen. So I also think that, consolidating development ultimately preserves the natural resources. And I think that's been shown, and I think that is also represented pretty well in our open space plan. And so clustering, housing and subdivisions to preserve bigger blocks of uninterrupted nature, I'm hopeful people can get behind, and I think that is something that works well with municipalities and also works well with developers. And I think everybody can win in that kind of situation.
I would agree with that, John, and I'd just say that as far as referring back once again to the 2004 plan and the 131 action plans, one of the things that was clear in 2010 when the implementation committee for the 2004 plan came out with its overall review, one of the high priority actions for the 2004 was to direct growth or direct housing development into the growth areas. And we failed to do that. We continue to fail to do that. And it's, once again, high priority on this plan. But I can just tell you, from 2004 to date, we have failed to do that. The vast majority of development in the town of Raymond, as far as housing, are single-family homes on large lots. And it's exactly what John is saying. What does that do? Well, it breaks up basically large tracts of land that could be used for open space or conservation. And so the whole idea of pushing, trying to direct that building growth in the growth areas preserves overall the rural nature of the town. We just haven't been successful in doing it.
To follow that, Pete, I believe the 04 plan recommended that in order to identify priority conservation areas, that an open space plan be created, which it was, and that identified parcels, and the Raymond Community Forest was identified in that plan. Yep. as a big parcel. It wasn't necessarily high priority. It was an opportunity that came along when Hancock Land Company was looking to change some of the ownership there and worked with Raymond to help make that project happen. So, correct me, Ben, in this current version of the comp plan, updating the open space plan, perhaps that needs some more oomph, because conservation doesn't happen from a state down unless it's a vast resource like Morgan Meadow that was a state scale project. But it usually involves a large parcel landowner, perhaps like the maple syrup producer here in town. And so that an update of the open space plan is appropriate.
Yeah, I'd echo John as far as, it may sound like I'm a gloomy Gus as far as the 2004 plan. I think that given what the tools they had at the time, and that I thought they did an outstanding job, and that the open space plan that came out of that was a huge success of the 2004 comprehensive plan. It just doesn't seem to have achieved the impact it was designed for. And so it's up to the people in the town to decide if that's what they want. Do they want to have this building continue to be single-family homes on large tracts of land, or do they want to try and look at the regulations as far as density is concerned for housing and concentrate that density in areas that are both a growth area, meaning they have investment, that they have connectivity, that they have facilities, that they're a destination.
To just loop it all around to something Brian said at the initial comment, we are on the edge of North Windham, and from the beginning as a committee we've talked about, the development's coming. We may not want it, but we want to control it when it gets here. And so what's our best way to do that? And so all of these conversations have really been around that, including all the development of housing to allow our kids to be able to afford houses here, if that's what they want to do too.
Okay. Any other comments from audience or committee members regarding this?
Madam Chair, I just ask, is there going to be a provision through North Star or through this committee? I know that the quote-unquote public comment period ends today. It started in October. It goes through to tonight. But if there are individuals that something occurs to them, they have an epiphany, they have a thought that it's going to solve everything, we'd be doing our due diligence by keeping it open so that we can continue to collect those comments. I know that there's got to be an end point. When we get to the point of basically saying this is our plan, we're endorsing it and we're going to go forward with it. And certainly there's always the onus of the state, which looms large for me, which is, they could come in and say, no, we don't like this, you didn't do that, and that can cause this committee a lot more work. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think we have a heck of a good plan. So I know that there's got to be an endpoint, but we consider as a committee to keep comments open to a certain date for more feedback from the public.
I don't think that's a bad idea. I concur that there needs to be some cutoff to get the next version of the plan to the council. As I noted in the PowerPoint, we are expecting to get comments back from the state in January sometime. And that could range from a good job, everything looks good, to here's some optional comments that you might want to consider integrating, to here's, a handful of things that you really need to beef up or add to the plan. So I don't think it's going to be a wholesale, major update. Usually, if that's going to happen, they would have given some indication of that already and say your plan's not complete. They would do that within the first few weeks of the submission. They haven't done that. So I think that they're really more focused on, does this plan address the state requirements? And we have built the plan so that it hopefully would, and we'll see if we can get it right on the very first try. But in January and February, we would be taking any state comments plus the comments we've heard this evening and that we've gotten online so far, and kind of working with the committee to integrate those into the document that is online right now. And if the committee wanted to leave the website open, it's scheduled to close, but if they wanted to leave it open until the point in January when we get state comments, that might be a more natural time to kind of put a pin in things while we integrate those comments into the plan. And I will say it's not done until it's done. And what that means is there could still be changes coming out of a select board review. They go through their own public hearing process before putting anything on the warrant. But once it's on the warrant, it's kind of locked in that form. But I think until between now and that point in March, there's room to make adjustments and reprioritize and calibrate things. So long way around, I don't think it would be a problem to leave the online comments open until probably mid-January. I don't know exactly when we'll get those state comments. If you want to tie it to that, or if you want to pick a date in mid-January, I think either approach would still allow us to stay on that time schedule.
I'm fine with that if the committee believes that that's a good course to go down. But I'm also just thinking logically, we're about to approach Christmas and New Year's and everyone's on vacation, and I can just say that probably this is not on their agenda. I even think it would be fair of us even to go to, say, the 20th of this month, because I just think realistically, what would we expect to get back? And then that makes more of a rush for us and for North Star to put it all together. So I'm just trying to be, I don't know, I'm just trying to be a little bit realistic, I guess. We have given a lot of time, and I'm not saying that more time would be better, obviously, but I just also want to not put undue burden on anybody, and also just think about what we're working with as far as the time frame.
Sure. Well, I get, my comment would be that simply I think that's a great idea, and since we can't take any actions in a public hearing, that after this public hearing is over and we go to our regular meeting, that we make a motion.
Sounds good.
Okay.
There is a hand raised online now, Madam Chair.
Okay. I do not have glasses on. I think that says Marilyn.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
I just wanted to make a comment that a lot of this is ideal thinking, but pragmatically, what Brian Walker suggested was finding a way to implement some things is probably going to take financial input. And if we want to maintain some large tracts of openness and rural land, it seems that we have enough left that right now, if in the implementation we could focus on augmenting the tracts of land that are already preserved, such as near the community forest or along the Tenney River, where the land trust has put in perpetuity, cannot these areas be looked at for augmentation to add to them so that they're not broken up before it does get developed? And it takes money and fundraising for the land trust to affect some of these preserved tracts. And if we could set up some kind of a bond financially to have it at our disposal to help augment when we're working with some of these groups to be able to offer some assistance, because if we don't do it in the next 10 years, it's going to be hard to control the development unless you put ordinances in for people who have large development capability lands, that they set up a community of so many condo type residences into the point where either the ordinance would say a certain percentage of your development lands have to be preserved, such as I saw them doing in California. That can be implemented, but there are some areas in North Raymond and elsewhere that we could take a look at and see where we might try to keep a corridor of uninterrupted lands and preserve the feeling of openness available to everybody. Where I lived before, I saw that people went out on their lunch hours into the salt marsh, one little road to have their lunch, where they looked off into the distance over the marsh. They didn't see any residences. People congregated there. They sought them out. And you see it in England, you see it all over. The uninterrupted lands that can be maintained for people to enjoy in the future. And we've already grown from when we first came to Raymond, from like 1,500 to 4,500 residents, and it's going to keep happening. So this is the chance to try to augment the places that we already are working on. Thank you. Oh, I live at 172 AI Road.
Thank you, Marilyn. I would like just to somewhat respond to that in a way, talking about financials and what happens next in bonds. Something that maybe we as a committee, since we've been at this for so long, are going to kind of find some enjoyment in, is that we, after this is done, get to pass off this work to the other functioning parts of our local government here, from the select board to the finance committee to the planning board. It becomes the work of those town pieces. So unfortunately, our hands are a bit tied in what we can do on a financial perspective. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know, Peter, you'd like to?
Sure, I'd echo that as far as, once again, what the limitations are that this committee can do. What I would say is that in the plan, in numerous places, it makes the case for conserving land. It makes the case for either hiring a consulting firm to look at grant applications, because there is money out there, whether it's to make our roads safer. There's money out there for that. As a matter of fact, in our surrounding community, it was in the paper last week that there are monies out there. We just weren't included in it. But maybe we need to have our ear to the ground a little bit more, have a little bit more professional guidance, have a little more assistance in pursuing those, as well as conservation land. And we have had, with Loon Echo, We have already established a relationship with them, and I agree wholeheartedly with the individual on Zoom now that there needs to be more in the way of conservation dollars put aside. Once again, it's in the plan. We're asking for it. We've recommended it. Now it will be up to the implementation committee, the select board, budget, finance, and ultimately the people in the town to make that a reality. I believe what surprised me is when we had a discussion earlier on this, I think $35,000 that's in conservation fund. That's money.
Still in the open space fund.
Oh, in the open space fund. So that money is there. And I believe that the comment from the individual from Luneka was saying, well, that's a nice start. That's a chunk of change. But we need to improve on that in order to be able to fulfill the objective of preserving more property. By the same token, everything that we've talked about as far as ordinances are concerned are really geared towards focusing on where building takes place and where it's appropriate and where it's not, whether it be commercial or residential or environmental.
And to that end, too, the manpower behind it, if there are individual residents who feel very strongly about one initiative, even if it's not a priority item, if there is somebody willing and able to head that committee, there are multiple committees besides the implementation committee, and I'm sure it would be low-hanging fruit for them just to hand it over. So I'm sure there's not going to be any objection if, because I know in our discussions with Luneko and other conservation, even when Steve came in earlier, then there's opportunities, or there's opportunities there to tap into some of the resources that we have available.
Okay, I'm still not seeing anybody else get up to the podium, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. In the interest of time and moving us further along, I'd like to ask if anybody would like to propose a motion to close our public hearing tonight.
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor? And Sean, I see your hand raised. Excellent, thank you. So now we will conclude with our regular meeting.
Can I just add a question? You said at first it was mid-January, now you're saying December 20th to close public comment?
We'll decide that.
We're going to decide that now.
Yes, we'll decide that
Yeah.
very shortly. Yeah, that's okay.
Thanks,
So-
folks, for coming out.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks for your work.
Got it.
Okay, so, thank you.
You need it.
I think we should start with
Thank you.
when should we close public comment? I think that's a good place to start. And then let's sort of give Ben some direction.
I make a motion that we close public comment on December 20th.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
I would hope that we could do it at the end of the month, just people get through Christmas. They have some downtime between Christmas and New Year's. To me, that would be let's just do the 31st.
Okay, so
That's
we,
a friendly amendment.
yeah, would we like to call that an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
So first you vote on the
So,
amendment.
right, so.
second the amendment.
Second the, all right. All those in favor of the amendment?
That passes.
For the 31st, Sean, if you're following.
Instead of the 20th.
Okay, instead of the 20th. And then we will vote on the amended motion. So, and I've already had a second on that. So all those in favor of the amended motion?
Done?
And Sean, I see your hand up. Okay, so January 31st, do we still, no?
December 30th?
December
Sorry,
31st.
December 31st.
Close the public comment.
Close public comment.
And this
Madam
applies to
Chair.
the person who presented one at the 11th hour at 59
A
minutes.
prize. Okay, you get a donut.
Yeah,
I
right.
missed who seconded the
No,
amendment.
that's the way to do it.
Jackie.
Oh, I thought she made the emotion. Okay.
No, John.
No, John made the
made
amendment. Jackie seconded it.
John as in Clark, correct?
John
Yep.
as in Clark.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. I was trying to type and lost track.
Okay, so now I think we should give direction to North Star Planning on the comments that we've received tonight, and public comment. So that he can take that. And I guess I will open it up, and if there's anything left to say, I'll finish it.
Well, I guess I have, I know I've heard from several people who were so excited to see that Raymond Cape was on there as far as a pathway, walkability, focusing on that. But I wonder if we have to pick one area to focus on for walkability and sidewalks, or if the top priority could be
Both?
generally speaking in town. I don't know. Do we have to pick one area? Could we pick two areas? I don't know.
Could we suggest that a committee be formed to study that issue and have the committee make recommendations as to what the priority should be?
Do you mean like a feasibility study in a way? Like
Yes.
what?
But my question would be to Ben, I don't know that it was the committee, the sense I have, that it was the committee that assigned the Cape walking path and bike path as a high priority, as it's mentioned as the priority in the plan. Did you see data in any of the surveys that was suggesting that of all the areas we talked about that we'd like to see sidewalks and connectivity and trails, that what rose to the top was the Cape?
That was an important place to build bike and pedestrian safety, but so was that section of road that would connect the two village growth areas. So to your point, Jackie, they're both priorities. There are multiple priorities, and it's good to name those. But it could be up to a committee, it could be up to the select board or to the public works folks as they build their capital improvement plan to do that prioritization. I think another thing that just kind of identifying the priorities generally can do is leave it open for opportunities that come along. So if DOT is going to be doing a bunch of work in 302, for example, or there's a road project scheduled 4 or 5 years from now for Route 85. Naming those priorities in the plan will make that part of the conversation in those efforts, so that it's not necessarily going to be the kind of thing where we have to do this and we can't do the others. It's more like, let's list where we have priorities and where we have visions for improvements, and we'll make progress as a community with outside agencies like DOT as they move their plans forward as well. I think there could be things that kind of fall into your lap if you list them in the plan. Like if there's a major commercial development on 302, it would give the planning board the ability to say, hey, this is an area where there's supposed to be enhanced landscaping and sidewalks. And that becomes part of the planning.
So as an example, when we in 2015, 2016, when we got the state money to go half and half with the sidewalks in the village, even if we had not identified the village as which at that point as a priority to have sidewalks, the state was going to go halves with us if we put the sidewalks there. But with any type of grants or funding and things like that, a lot of it's going to be dictated by the grant giver. So are we gonna say no? We can't take a 50-50 split on this bicycle path or this sidewalk because it's not one of our high priorities. I think So I just don't know about handcuffing ourselves to anyone rather than state what we've stated in the plan very clearly, which is
Both
a
are options.
high priority for the town is connectivity, bike paths, walking paths, and improvements that reduce traffic safety issues. And, I understand, but naming the priority would be, another way to go. And you could, but I would say that based on at least the feedback that we've gotten from the online comments, that what a few of the comments came back and said, I don't know why you're making Raymond Cape a priority. And I'm always sensitive to the fact that, since our sample size is always so small, it can be 5 people that live on the Raymond Cape that say, I would like to see it. And I understand there's a woman saying that there was a fatality on that road. Well, yeah, so I guess I could say, well, I guess we need walking paths and sidewalks on Egypt Road.
Okay, so maybe, I guess my thought would be if we could make it more comprehensive as a priority list item, to not just cover Raymond Cape, but list that as one of the options that we would want to pursue. So Raymond Cape, connection of the villages, or a loop around Panther, something, along those lines where it might list a couple options.
Do we have the actual language we could just pull up, and then maybe we could just look at it real quick? Is that okay?
Well, I was going to say, because what I'm hearing is we don't want to tie ourselves, but we want to sort of in some way be a little bit specific, right? Because we want to give direction. So saying we would like to create more bike pathways and connectivity, with the focus in mind of connecting the village areas and Cape Road, calling those two out specifically.
Consider that.
Well, so we're giving detail, but we're also keeping it open.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I like that.
Yeah.
Did you get
Yep.
that then?
Yep. I can bring up that section of the plan if that's helpful as I'm doing it. If it's not helpful, tell me real quick.
I liked Kayla's language. I was fine with that.
Yeah, I think we're
good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good with finding a way just to be, include those two areas, highlight them, but also state clearly that we're open to all areas. Because quite frankly, all roads would be improved with sidewalks and bike paths. So, there isn't one in Raymond that would not probably benefit from that. I think we should hit the major things, the themes maybe, and that might be helpful. So vision statement was mentioned a few times. I mean, personally, I feel like we really went over this many times. Many opportunities for public comment. I kind of feel like continuing to grind over it really is probably not, in my opinion, the best use and utilization of our time. But that was mentioned a few times with the comments online anyway. Is there any feeling that we wish to address that in any way?
I'd say that we've had similar comments before already, and we had many discussions about them, and the vision statement that we have is a result of all the comments, both critical and positive, and we've already hit on those things, and we don't need to discuss it any further.
Agreed. Agreed.
agreed.
Agreed. Okay. I think, let's see. How about comments about organizing goals based on priorities? Now, I think actually as a committee, if I remember correctly, we had sort of talked about that ourselves anyway, about how we organize it just for even our own sanity. But anybody who's reviewing this, so I don't know how much of an ask that is. Or I don't, I know the state mandates a lot of that giant list. So without creating too much work, is there a way that, it sounds like that was comment received, do we have any desire to be asking?
Yeah, to format the actions according to their priorities, starting with the highest priority down to the lowest priority.
Yeah, I think in general, what we've tried to do is format the list so it lines up with how the state's going to look at it. So the goals are arranged by topic, and I think that was the comment. Is instead of looking at these by topic, let's just prioritize these things. So to that end, I think prioritization is good. That's kind of behind the effort to call just a handful of these things up as highest priorities and tie them in with those priority goals. If you want, I think we could do another version of it, or just have like, here's the hard copy version sorted by topic with the high priority ones listed and first for each topic. But I think electronically, if we can provide the actual copy of the spreadsheet, you could sort it however you wanted to. It just wouldn't be part of that document. I don't know if that's like going to get to where you're talking about, or if I'm missing the mark.
Could we maybe have one more exhibit that is only the high priority items, and it is specifically addressed to the implementation committee?
Yep. I think that's
And get rid of all the non-high priority items, right? We've got the master list. They can always refer to that plan. They're going to work through the whole plan, but exhibit 3 or something is implementation committee high priority items, and it's just the top 10 or something.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, with the time we have into this thing, to not give the IMP committee that kind of guidance would be giving them a free rein to pick and choose from the list that we might well have spent a lot of time on thinking that's a good one, but it's not a priority.
Does that sound like a reasonable compromise between state expectations, ease of their review,
Yeah.
and
It
sort
does.
of picking and highlighting, even though I feel like in a way we sort of already do that with our list of goals, but if that seems fair enough, it sounds like it's a good compromise.
Yeah,
between-
and I think we've done that. We've taken the first step at calling out the very highest, I guess we can say.
Yeah.
But there should be like all of those high priorities, right? The next tier. If that's not enough, when you've implemented all of these things, there's a bunch of other things to do.
More.
I think that's really consistent with the philosophy we've had kind of from the get-go, is that it can be a little overwhelming.
Yes.
To look at a list of 130 things that you need to do in the next 10 years and kind of wonder where you get started. So we really went to a lot of effort to kind of make sure we're calling out the most important, but I think like there is no problem at all in putting together a little bit longer of a list that would give some discretion to the implementation group to say, look, if we've got 25 high priority actions, what are the 3 we're going to do once we get through the list on page 2? I think that's very doable.
Okay. Any other major themes we would like to discuss?
I have one. I think this is a newer idea, and it's hopefully not too big of a curveball, but in the in kind of the village areas, we describe certain types of development, and I did do a little research in some other comp plans. I thought what might be helpful is maybe like some precedent imagery of what it means in the context of the current streetscape. And I think an example would be like Main Street in town. We're saying, like what does a 3-unit multifamily look like on that current road? Can we have a simple sketch showing how big this house could be, and things like that? So when we start having, conversations and people are like, well, your comp plan has labeled this the growth area and we can build any multifamily we want. People can be like, actually, like, we have this image of kind of what we were doing that fits the character of the street. It's not overwhelming to look at, and I know that, that is done in other comp plans. I think Casco did one with one of their areas, and basically, they've got, a bunch of single family homes with maybe empty lots. And so like those lots would eventually get filled in with different types of housing and buildings, but having some sort of like, some sort of imagery that basically describes the narrative that we've already provided.
It sounds great. So it's like a photoshopped
I think
graphic.
the way, Ben, feel free to chime in, but I think, the way I've seen it is, it can be a hand sketch that's more professional than me doing it. And And that would be it. You could take like an existing photo and you could literally hand sketch in just like how a building would look like in multiple spots.
In the plan, do we speak, I thought we did, but do we speak to recommending that to the planning board that they relook at their design standards? I know that there was discussion at the meeting with the select board and the department heads that I think Jackie may have mentioned, but to make it clear that what we were doing as far as when we call it a village, that we're talking about some sort of standard construction that would give it the flavor of a New England village versus the big box or the 3-story concrete condo.
Yeah.
But we do mention that, I thought, in the goals or the actions.
Yeah, and I think that to your point, we've tried to provide enough narrative to describe these places, and I think what I'm hearing you say is like let's put some pictures to illustrate this. So when we talk about 2-story buildings with, you know, single family homes and a few 4-unit buildings, like what does that look like in a rural crossroads context or a village context? Those places are out there. They exist today in many places around Maine, and we've done projects where we've said, what we're talking about is something like, or what we're not talking about. You know, we like, hey, when we talk about your village, we're not talking about downtown Westbrook or Rockland. We're talking about something that looks more like Denmark or Naples. Or we're talking about, you know, when we talk about conservation subdivisions, here's a couple plans or photographs from good examples of conservation subdivisions that have been built in Maine.
My concern would be having an actual picture in the plan, no matter how much we label and stamp it as this is a concept.
Yeah.
Some people are going to look at it and say, oh, these are new design standards, and you know, maybe even the planning board might have a little problem with that. You're sending out messages, you know, you're cashing, you know, checks you can't cover here, because you know it's the planning board basically that puts together design standards and then submits them to the town.
As long as we feel good that we've passed it on to the planning board, I feel fine about it. It is something that I think I might have a photo, but it is something that is in other comp plans. So it's not, I don't think it's atypical necessarily for a comp plan to have. But I do agree that it definitely takes the planning, like the specific planning of these areas, one step further than we have as a committee looked at it. And we're pretty late in the process, so.
I guess I would be like a little nervous to be too specific with the plan, just so that we're not ruling out things that could be a possibility and could still be in line with what we want. You know, I think the nature and the purpose of the plan is really to not be that specific and to say, you know, I think we do a good job of providing a narrative and talking about like a look and a feel and a sense of what the space should be. And I think that is really what the plan is intended to do.
I'm almost more inclined to put pictures of what we don't want. Like we just slap a picture of the Fieldings condos on there. I think we're good.
And could you put a link to a couple different scenarios as a simpler reproduction in the plan? Just a link. I mean, again, we'd still be in some eyes dictating what we're trying to have Raymond look like, but wouldn't be going as far as to have the actual picture or graphic or sketch, but just some resources that the committee could use to explore, make sure that they include a variety of design.
I do think just having the planning board do it, you know, I think this is definitely something in their wheelhouse. I think the intent is not to provide design standards, and I think there's a little bit of a difference between like the size of a building and then like how it looks from the outside. And so I think this is more to help people understand when we say multifamily or like condos or, you know, those words that are referenced in the plan. It's not a 5-story building
What's it look like?
next to a single family home. It's the ER closed door, you know, replicated somewhere. You know, it's a nice classic looking building that could serve multiple purposes. So it's, but I understand the concern that as much as we stamp it as a concept, that might not be how it's taken, so.
And it could be used in a negative way against the plan. It doesn't take a lot for somebody to get a hold of something that wants to make a difference and run with it and build some kind of a
Momentum.
constituency with it.
I mean, the alternative is if someone saw a 6-unit multifamily in there and they built a 6-story building, you know, and 1 unit per floor versus, you know, the intent of that is really a 2-story wider building or
I
a
think
3-story.
what's come through loud and clear over 3 years is well, we don't want to look like Wyndham. So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, which is it'd be easier just to say this is what we don't want. But I believe ultimately being vague enough in our narrative to say, you know, preserve the rural nature of a New England village. I mean, that gives you quite a bit of latitude as far as, but at the same time, you understand that that's not Wyndham.
So just for clarification purposes, that is laid out as a policy to maintain village character in Raymond growth areas, and we do specifically call out that we want building types compatible with existing historical buildings. There's 3 action items listed under that general policy that asks for design guidelines and standards to be reviewed and strengthened.
So that does give guidance to the planning board, but at the same time, we're not being proscriptive.
Many
It does
years,
paint a picture, like there, you can envision in your head what that looks like, I feel like, without a visual.
And do we have a height limit? I can't recall. And the
30
growth
feet.
limit is 30
35?
feet. 30.
yeah,
30,
Okay.
35?
except for barns.
That applies in the 302 growth quarter too. Right.
Yeah, many years ago, Terry DeWine did the design standards for the town of Raymond. It was more for
And the village.
the village, but he had really nice pictures and
Yeah.
I don't know if he did any residential type of things. It'd be worth looking at that document to see if anything like that's in there.
Well, if we go forward, I mean, if down the road, if we're doing transportation studies and whatnot, you know, that's going to involve imagery and, you know, presentations by engineers and that sort that will paint a picture visually too for what it could be, what we could see.
And a number of the projects that came to the planning board, they did look at the design standards, and a lot of people, they're voluntary, they're not mandatory, and a lot of the applicants would take those and they would use them. They'd incorporate them to some degree in their developments, and I feel good about them taking a look at those and honoring.
That's over the last 6 months or a year or more that you've been on the P board?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Decades.
Yeah, right.
Are there any other major themes or trends that we would like to discuss to give guidance to? I think I just want to reiterate making sure that based on the comments received that if they called out an inaccuracy that we just double check on that and double check on acronyms. And I guess maybe us looking at the numbers. I know you had made a comment about checking to see if numbers seem right or don't feel right, that we give a different reference point. I don't know. I think that's more of a task for us as in our final reviewing of it. I guess in a way, I don't know.
I don't know that the numbers are wrong at
Okay.
all. I think it's more of a, you know, I mean, I can use the specific example. If you see something that's increased by like 100 or 300%, but it's gone from 1 to 3, it's not as big as an issue. If it's
Okay.
gone from 1,000 to 3,000.
Yeah, so for instance, if something was increased by 3,000%, but we're talking, I believe it was 9 to 60 or something like that.
Exactly.
it's-
Put those in
it's not-
parentheses, 9 to 60, if we want to.
Well, actually, there's a table that directly references it. You can derive 300% from that if you do math, but we don't actually call out 300%. Probably.
If memory serves me, there was one online comment that basically told you, Ben, that all of your demographic data was incorrect.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, it had to do with like how recent the data is, like where do you draw the line, and the data that we're using is from 2022,
Yeah.
which was the state data pack that the town had. So that is not too old to understand trends and themes and draw some conclusions about what the town needs to plan for, which is really the intent of the data. So if it's more than 3 years old, that's when the state says, go get the data pack and brush these numbers up. But if it's within 3 years, it's clear enough.
Okay, so otherwise what you're saying is the state will call us out.
The
if our
state,
data seems
yes.
too old.
Correct.
Okay.
And is that 3 years since a past plan, 3 years since the start of a plan? Like, because our committee's 2 years long.
Yep.
So if we had data that was 3 years old when we started, it'd be 5 years old when we pass it.
Yeah. It has to be 3 years within from what they're reviewing.
Okay.
So Raymond is well within the bounds of normal data from that standpoint. The only thing I would say, and we talked about this in the office when we were reviewing those comments, is if there was a major change, like if there was some kind of huge clear cut, or if there was a massive development or the loss of a major employer or two, those would be the kinds of things where you want to go back and make sure, like, because that can change the trajectory of goals and policies. But generally, if the data is within a few years, like, you have a good sense of what's happening in the community.
I will say there was a fairly large set of comments that wasn't necessarily, didn't look like it was all captured in the second set of comments that you gave us, but I will just say it looked like mostly my big wish list for Raymond, which I thought was kind of cool. But it calls out, very specific things, and I think we were sort of, we wanted to be specific. We're not trying to be maybe that drilled down, but I just would like to have that in there, that there was several things on here that I thought were an extended comment that I really liked a lot of their ideas.
I think we've talked about all those ideas at one time or
Yeah,
another.
I was thinking that, yeah.
I think what we tried to do is put the tools in place to implement those and give people the opportunity to do it. So we didn't, even if we didn't necessarily call it out.
Yeah, I love food trucks.
Oh, yeah.
Who doesn't like food trucks and music, concerts and farmers markets and book clubs and entertainment events and things for seniors. I just wanted to acknowledge, I guess, that large comment made. And
I hate to say it because I want everything on that list, but I think it's all like individual resident initiative, like starting a project, getting behind it and pushing it forward.
Yeah.
I like the smaller house lot size comment.
Oh, and that's on, I think that's included in that, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, there's,
That was in that
it does,
paragraph.
evaluate reducing minimum lot sizes in specific areas. But,
I actually had a hot take on that. I actually didn't like that one.
well, I was gonna say, it was one that I wasn't as fond with. I think that because
About the
that goes
same lot?
against what we've received for feedback. I mean, maybe I personally would want that, but as a member of this committee, I have to consider that this is the town's plan, and that's not the kind of feedback that we got, that they want, rural areas lot sizes to be reduced. I feel like that's the exact opposite of what we were being told.
Well, unless it's something like an open space development plan, right, where you would have smaller lots, but it would be concentrated to the one development, not a wide scale.
And just not to be redundant, but the recent state mandate as far as accessory dwelling units in growth areas really addresses density. It really does.
This is more just an anecdote, but I do some work in Massachusetts, and they had a statewide initiative, which is larger than this ADU LD 2003, but they have basically required 175 municipalities within the state that have access to public transit, either commuter rail or buses, to zone multifamily as of right at a density of minimum 15 units per acre.
Wow.
And that is basically the, eastern third of the state. So, I think LD 2003 is pretty light in comparison to that.
But understand that it must be, certainly that what the state is doing is looking at increasing the housing stock, and what they're using is, if they're not using sewers or public water, they're simply using transportation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I feel like we've come to a pretty good consensus on receiving feedback.
I think there's one in here, the Steve Crane comments were really well written and thoughtful, and I had no problems with them, and would propose that we incorporate them. Unless there's any discussion.
I was going to say the same thing. I thought that they rounded out those portions and, well.
So I guess, Ben, our directive would be, can you take that specific comment and try to incorporate the major points and highlights from that? Does that sound?
His red line edits specifically.
Got it. Yep.
Also, did anybody drive through town today between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Did anybody notice, how many state troopers were pulling people over along
No.
302? I guess they had a traffic detail in town today. So I saw several people pulled over along 302 and on Main Street today. Nope, I didn't. But
Good to
they
know
were
they come
out
around.
in numbers.
Oh, they were behind me on my way into work today.
Well, I don't know if it was part of that effort in the Lakes region to do some traffic calming or what, but
Yeah.
they were specifically here in town, I noticed.
I know Peter had shared an article with us, and I wish they called out more specifics on what their plans were, so we can steal ideas. That's what you do. You steal other municipalities' ideas. Take their good ideas and you make them your own.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, why aren't we a part of it?
Well, I was gonna wait till public comment,
goodness.
committee comment, but I'll take this opportunity since it's been brought up. You open the door, so to speak. That would be my question. My question would be exactly that. I mean, there are these are three communities. They surround us. They've been working on this for a year. They got funding through grant money to implement it, and that's the question. Where are we? Why didn't we hear about this? And I will just tell you, and this this is just my own personal thoughts. There was an acronym that was in that article, and it basically talked about the Greater Portland Council of Governments, which we used to belong to. And I guess I'll ask this question. I could ask the select board. Why aren't we part of that now? And nothing against North Star, but the 2004 plan was done by the Greater Portland Council of Governments assisting the town, the municipal people in town. And they did the plan. And I will tell you that I just did a little research on it, and unless I'm way off base, it's about 50 grand in dues annually. And from that, there's everything from support on grants to assistance with planning and everything. And I guess I'm just asking that question. And why didn't we know about this? So that's my committee comment.
I didn't realize that it was a membership. I thought we just were part of it.
Nope.
No, you have to,
The club
you have to
membership.
pay to reap
Okay.
the benefits.
Gotcha.
Okay. Do we have any other further additions for Ben and suggestions and direction? And Ben, I guess I will ask you, have you received from us what you were looking for?
Yes. The one thing I want to clarify of all of those things was the additional exhibit about the high priority goals, like consolidating those into a single location. Are those ranked? Are those the goals with the time frame of that are short-term items? Is that what you mean by high priority, or is there a different?
I think as
Well,
far as
it's like 1 to 3.
prioritization, we were looking at timeframes.
Yeah, 1 to 3, like the first sort of.
Yeah, it says short-term is 1 to 2, medium is 2 to 4. So if we can kind of collect all of those 1 to 2 year short-term items into a single exhibit, that's what you were.
Listed by priority.
I would think that would provide guidance
Okay.
to the implementation committee as clear as we can.
Got it.
I mean, the reason that we put timeframes on it was because originally there wasn't, was to give them more specific guidance. Not necessarily hold their feet to the fire or dictate to them, but basically saying, we'd like to see some action within 1 to 3 years on this.
That's good. And the next question, I think I brought it up earlier, but will this group review the changes in end of January, February timeframe online? Like review, here's the updated document based on the feedback, or is there going to need to be a meeting end of January, early February in order to kind of discuss and verify before it goes to the select board?
I will say this, and just, I think we are.
I'm going to say the same thing.
We might, I don't know, Peter. I think, and you can clarify this if I'm wrong, but I think we are tapped out on North Star planning. So.
Last I saw was $1,500.
So we are at the end of our rope. So I think if we're going to meet again, we're going to have to do it on our own. I am personally fine with reviewing final changes to make sure the things that we asked for got implemented. The changes that the state asked for, it's not like we can be like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not what we want. So I feel like what is important for us to do as a committee is to review the changes that are made and make sure that what we propose, like go back in our minutes or rewatch this meeting and say, are the things that we asked for done? Specifically. And then I think I would feel comfortable putting this forth to the select board. So I don't know how everyone else feels about that. I mean, I very much enjoyed my time with you. I'm not trying to cut it off prematurely. But I just also think we need to be realistic about everyone's time and respectful.
And I
So
would
that's
say
my sentiment, is that we don't necessarily
to be
need another meeting.
fiduciarily responsible, I would say that if I calculated the $1,500, if I believe that's correct, that is remaining, and I don't know how much of that is going out, but we had planned on at least purchasing some signs to basically advertise at the for the vote at whether it's the town meeting or the referendum.
In June.
Yeah. Which I believe that's what we were talking about, getting those type of political signs, a few of them, and place them around town, reminding people that, this is an important vote. You got to please vote on this, support the plan and vote on it. So I would like to preserve as much of that, cash that we still have without going over budget, if we can possibly do it.
Yeah.
And Peter, did we ever look at how much mailers would be? We actually had a committee, we actually had a citizen ask me about doing a mailer to let people know, again, putting out there with the QR code. Do you remember what that would have cost us?
$3,500 comes to mind, and I could be way wrong, but for
No,
some
I was
reason,
thinking
that
around
feels
that.
That's
like
what we had.
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was it, 5,000?
3,500.
3,000, okay, so that would be over our budget, so we would
Yes.
probably be doing more of what Peter was saying, signs.
Yes.
I think if we all did a review electronic version, that would be fine. It'd be time to take your time to go through it carefully, and
And I
we're
think
saying that would be just incorporating the comments to date, and before Ben goes to.
I think if there's anything earth-shattering, maybe we can revisit that. Like, you know, maybe if we've received more comments that anybody reviews and says this is earth-shattering, I think we really need to meet again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think Peter and I, with careful emailing practices, can pull the committee without having a formal meeting by, you know, BCCing everybody and saying, have you reviewed it? Do you feel the changes were made? I feel like if we do careful emailing,
Yep.
we don't have to meet again. And we can still get the general consensus of the committee, or at least get your, yes, I've reviewed it.
I'm all right with that.
And I mean, this goes to the select board. People will have a chance to comment at the select board meeting on
And
it.
the select board has a chance to comment on it,
Yeah.
right?
More than comment, the select board.
They have to approve it.
They have to approve it to go on the warrant.
Right.
And I think Ben was absolutely correct, and we've learned this by experience. Once it goes on the warrant, it's either up or down. There's no changes after that.
So Ben, does that seem, I mean, you've proposed the question, I was already sort of thinking this, like that we really don't have the funds to utilize you again?
Yeah, I mean,
So
we
at this
want to,
point,
we're very close to the end and we're going to make sure this gets to the finish line. But I think if the board overall is comfortable with updating the plan as discussed this evening and having the chairs kind of be the quality control to make sure we haven't missed anything, then that would be a fine way to proceed.
Okay, so if we're in consensus with that, then I say that that's how we move forward.
Good.
Unanimous consent.
Yes.
Unanimous consent.
So then,
Without an objection.
we need to approve our minutes from our previous meeting. I should have put the date on the agenda. So if someone has a really good memory and would like to put forth a motion.
The October minutes?
Or just, yes, or a general motion, please. For our,
I'd move that we approve them as written.
Second.
and all those, or any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Sean, you're blacked out. Can you say yes or no?
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. So that was approved. I guess real quickly, I know we've been here later than normal. Peter and I think Frank, did you participate? And John did hang out at this last election. I went for more of the tail end of it. I think maybe 5 to 6 or 4 to 6, something around that range. And it was very busy at that time. And Peter had mentioned that we were on our second 500 pack of flyers. And I would have to say that once again, in my experience, in my time there, almost every single person was willing to listen to a 3-second, hey, this is the comment period and this is what we're doing and the draft is ready for your review. I would have to say a majority of people were willing to take the flyer and said thank you and looked it over. So I would say that was a successful outreach. I still find it interesting that 1,000 flyers went out and we've gotten 25 odd official comments that we think are individual, and a handful tonight. I just like to point that out, I guess.
Well, you're only going to usually say something if you have a change or a gripe or whatever, right? So I think we can assume that most people
We're entirely
loved
satisfied
it.
with it. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to look at it, and I really appreciate your optimism. Peter, do you have anything you'd like to add to
No,
that?
it was a great experience for me in this whole committee. And I think one of the most fulfilling things was going to the elections and actually having that 1 minute, 2 minute conversation and meeting my neighbors and hearing what they had to say.
Okay, next.
Madam Chair, we
Yes.
have lost connection with Zoom. So Sean's no longer on the meeting.
Oh, we hit our max meeting time.
Zoom is timed out.
Yeah, timed out.
Yeah, if we have to vote or anything, we still got a quorum.
I don't believe we're, well, besides ending the meeting, but next on our agenda is the CompPlan committee comment. Peter, you've already spoken. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I guess my only other comment would be that there at the on the 10th, the select board has on its agenda to discuss traffic calming in the town, and I would encourage anyone interested in attending that. I plan to, and my wife plans on doing that, and I think that it's
That's important.
It's unfortunate that it takes a tragedy sometime, but you know we heard loud and clear from the community well before that tragedy that there was an issue, and it just unfortunately is coming to the point where there'll be discussions from leadership in the town starting next week.
That's great.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Peter. I would like to take a moment, since this is theoretically our last meeting together, to say thank you for everyone willing to hang on. I'd like to thank North Star Planning for all of your help, because I think as John had mentioned earlier, that we would really still be sitting here and up late at night and doing a lot of work. So without your aid and guidance, this would have been a very laborious process.
Second that.
All three.
And I just really have appreciated all the very thoughtful input that all of the committee members have provided. I felt that we were a great group and strived to listen to each other in the community. So I thank you all.
Thank you, both chairs, for the duty you signed up for and executed perfectly.
Thank you. Any other committee comment?
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes, go
I
ahead.
know I'm not a committee member.
It's okay.
but because you're saying that this will be your final meeting,
I believe it will be.
I
yes.
will have Mel send out the minutes, and if each one can send back any comments, and they'll be posted as final minutes.
Okay.
And Sue, can you tell us how long will we continue with our emails? Town emails?
I would think you should keep those until the vote,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
because people still may want to contact you and have questions. and
Okay.
whatnot.
For a formality question that brings up, when are we officially no longer a committee?
I believe, again, once the vote has happened, I believe.
And I think you,
Because at that
Kayla,
point-
will basically just send a communication to the select board telling them that the lifetime of the committee is over and would disband.
Okay.
I do have Zoom up again.
Okay, Sean, you've just missed, I think, just a couple committee comments just regarding thanking North Star Planning and all of the committee members for our time and effort. And I'm not sure when you cut off, but this is our last meeting. So we will continue to communicate limitedly via chairs by email. And Sue will also be asking us to approve the minutes from this meeting individually. Not sure if he's there or not.
Yeah, it looks like he might be trying to get back on, because he was going to introduce us to a new family member.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Wow.
Muted. Can't hear you.
Muted?
No, he's not muted.
No?
No sound? No, we don't have sound.
No, but you're
But
not.
we can
Yeah.
see
Don't wake up the baby.
a lovely
Congratulations.
No, sorry, but
I know he was,
congratulations.
Sean did tell me he was born on Black Friday, and so he's 5 days old.
Wow.
Wow.
Congrats.
That's lovely.
So did he say the name?
He didn't. I didn't get that far.
That's okay, maybe
Zoom
we
didn't
don't want to
pass.
make that public.
We were
That's fine.
we were chatting back and forth.
A future implementation committee member.
Oh, I'm so sorry we can't hear you, Sean. No. Okay. Not seeing any further items and discussion, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A second, and all those in favor? Sean, I know you can't speak, but maybe I see it raised. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.